Hey guys, it's Danny. In today's video, we are going to talk about Phalaenopsis orchids, and we're gonna answer a question that I'm sure every orchid beginner has asked himself or herself at some point. I know I sure did. And this is, why do Phalaenopsis orchids always end up growing leaning on one side of the pot? Can't they just go straight and make our life easier? Well, the answer is no, not really. It is actually within their nature to lean over the pot. But why would they do that? Well, simple. They're doing what feels natural. Even if we're talking about man-made hybrids, the gene of the parents tell the orchid to lean over because it just feels natural. Ever wondered why Phalaenopsis orchids tend to grow roots everywhere in the air without any type of trouble? Well, this is because they're epiphytic. In their natural habitat, they don't grow in soil, they grow on trees. And the way they grow on those trees is something like this, leaning downwards on the tree. At this point, however, we know there are several types of orchids which grow on trees, but not all of them tend to drip down. Why do Phalaenopsis do this? It all has to do with the environment in which these plants grow. Phalaenopsis orchids generally are not highlight orchids. They don't really stand for direct sunshine, particularly if it's hot. And this is because in their natural habitat, and specifically in the forest where they grow, they don't really get a lot of light, let alone direct sunshine. Therefore, most Phalaenopsis orchids have adapted to require little to medium light. One of these adaptations is the shape and the size of the leaves. Phalaenopsis orchids are known to create really big leaves. The bigger and wider the leaf, the more light it can capture. So even in a low light environment, a Phalaenopsis orchid can still photosynthesize and capture sunlight simply because it has massive leaves. Just think of it as a solar panel. The bigger it is, the more energy it will collect. Big leaves come at a price though, they are very heavy. An orchid would require tremendous amounts of energy to maintain the leaves straight and upright. So these leaves should be a lot thicker than this and a lot sturdier. And this all means energy that needs to be invested. But Phalaenopsis orchids are epiphytic, they don't grow in soil, and this means they don't have all that many nutrients to work with. They might not even have water on a daily basis. So creating very thick leaves, thick enough to maintain this whole big leaf upright, is borderline impossible. However though, the leaves can be sustained if they grow pendant or downwards, because they don't put pressure on the orchid axis almost at all. All they need to do is just dangle. There are other benefits to growing drooping down as well, such as avoiding bacterial and fungal infections. Whenever it rains, water just drips down these leaves. They are protected with a very glossy cuticle, and also due to the shape, water will never get trapped in the crown and in between the leaves. It will simply slide off, so it can never pool and accumulate bacteria or fungal spores. And this is for those of you who were wondering, what do orchids do in nature about crown rot and stem rot? Simple, they protect themselves against it. But what makes orchids grow like this? Well, there are two main things that dictate how the orchid will grow. First is light. An orchid will always tend to lean where the light source is. So wherever the window might be, most probably that's where the orchid will tend to grow. And second, gravity. All plants know where gravity is. So do Phalaenopsis orchids. They do sense where gravity comes from, so the leaves will always point towards that source. Whether they are in their natural habitat on a tree or on our windowsill, gravity is always in the very same place. At this point, you might be wondering why the orchids we purchase are grown upright. How do nurseries do it? Simple, just a little trickery. For one, the light source comes from above. Most nurseries use artificial light and it always stays on top. So the orchids will never lean towards the light because the light comes from above. And second, Phalaenopsis orchids are grown in special pots which have very tall sides, and these sides maintain the leaves upwards. Nurseries grow Phalaenopsis orchids upright simply because they take up less space. Nurseries, commercial ones at least, are aimed towards quantity. If you have leaning Phalaenopsis occupying too much space, it would not be economical. Also, on transport, you need to have space to send as many orchids as possible to flower shops. If they lean over, you would not be able to send as many as you would if they're grown upwards. Along the years, many orchid growers were interested to grow Phalaenopsis straight, and we tried all sorts of tricks and techniques. First of all, we tried rotating the orchid. Let's presume that where you are is the window. An orchid will start to lean towards the window. Well, what if we rotate it? Well, in many of the cases, what will result is a pretty wonky type of growth. Some leaves that are growing at the moment will start to lean to the other side. And sometimes you can actually end up with a pretty wonky looking Phalaenopsis. I'm not saying it's impossible, I'm just saying it doesn't work all the time. There are tricks we always do with orchids, such as shaping flower spikes, or inducing them into blooming whenever we want to by controlling temperatures. But when we are discussing about the core and basic fundamental principles of orchids, well, we cannot really force it too much. An epiphytic orchid will forever be an epiphytic orchid. No matter what, an orchid will still have a tendency to do whatever it is genetically programmed to do. I prefer to work with it rather than try and force an orchid to do all of the things I want. And pretty much that's the story with Phalaenopsis orchids and why they lean over. As soon as a new leaf is created in our care, you will notice that it will have the tendency to lean towards the light source. And that's okay, it might not be space saving, but that's just the nature of orchids. So alrighty guys, thank you for watching this video, hope you've enjoyed it and you learned something new. And you know the drill, if you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you hated this video, give it a thumbs down, subscribe to my channel for regular orchid videos, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. And with that said, I'll see you all next time. Bye!